Good evening, ma'am. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Ma'am, I think we can start now. I think 11 or 12 people have already joined.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
yeah.
Okay. Uh, yeah, hello everybody. Good evening.
Good evening,
Good
ma'am.
evening, ma'am.
Good
Good
evening,
evening,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Good evening, ma'am.
So before we start today's class, I just want to ask you how any problem you had with yesterday's class or anything any clarification you want or anything regarding yesterday's class or how you felt, what you wrote in your reflection, and then we'll start with today's. Anybody? Any feedback, any reflection which you had, which you felt after the class?
Hello, good evening, ma'am. I'm Pushwara this side.
Hello.
Uh, Ma'am, I really liked the class because I'm still new to the psychology field, and I got to learn so much from you and for my fellow interns also because all are mostly seniors. And in reflections, I wrote about what I learned, like psychodynamic, cognitive behavior approach, and uh, how to deal with clients and the examples that they gave.
Yes. Yes, actually, the everybody contributed so nicely in the class that makes the whole process more engaging, more insightful for even me also, because everybody has their own style of counseling, their own style of dealing with clients. Yeah, so let us start with today's session. I'll try to share the slideshow today, but if again there's some problem, then I'll just show the slides normally. Uh, Rahul sir, I don't have the option to share. Can you please give the mm, yeah? Thank you. Is the screen visible? Am I visible?
No, ma'am.
Yeah. So it starts again.
Yes, you are visible, ma'am.
But the
But the
screen was
screen
not
is not
visible.
visible. Yeah, screen is not visible.
Okay, let's try again. Uh, Now is the screen visible? Am I visible?
Yes, now
Yes,
it's
ma'am.
visible.
Okay. Let's really hope and pray that it remains this way. And now tell me one thing: whether I've changed the slide. So is the next slide visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. But
You
I
are
think I
not
am not
visible
visible.
though.
Yes.
Yeah.
Uh, oh God. Let's try again. I think me and the slides, everybody is visible now. All the things.
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Okay. So let's start before it goes away
No,
again.
ma'am, it is not visible
Oh
for me.
God. Wait. Who is not visible? Me or the slide?
Nothing. You are also not visible. Side is also not visible for me.
Okay. Wait. Let me just check. Is the slide visible now?
No, ma'am. Slide is not visible.
Um,
Ma'am, you can exit the class and enter again because it is visible to everyone, I believe.
okay.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Visible now? Others tell?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, let's start. Yesterday we did the theoretical part and the introductory bits of counseling, the areas where we can use counseling and what counseling is, what the myths about counseling are. Today we'll proceed into the more technical and the procedural part of counseling, like what skills we need to develop as counselors, then what are the stages of counseling, then the what is the life skills counseling model, then again some practical things which we need to keep in mind, what goes through a client's mind when he or she walks into a counseling session, then how do we initiate the first session, what do we say, what do we not say, and all those things. So let us first start with the skills. We most of the skills we have already covered while we were discussing yesterday. You guys came up with so many skills, all the qualities we have discussed of what the counselor needs to have to be competent, to be capable enough. But today we'll do the little bit more in detail of those skills. So when we are talking about skills of a counselor, they are mostly divided into two parts: the micro skills and the macro skills. And there are certain skills under each of them. So we'll see what each of them are, and we'll start with the micro skills. So micro skills, they are the basic skills that any competent counselor employs while working with the client. They can include attending to the client, active listening, questioning, empathy, but they are not limited to all these things. They include many other things also, which we'll see. So as we can understand that micro skills are these are the skills that we all need to develop in whatever field we are working, whether we are working in substance abuse, whether we are working with children, whether we are working with marital or couple counseling. We all need to have these skills. These are the basic crux or the foundation stone for counseling.
Excuse me,
uh,
ma'am.
yes.
Sorry, the slide is not visible.
Mm. To others also.
I have like
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Slide is not visible.
Let me just okay. Okay, now
ma'am, but you are not visible now.
it's okay. I let the slide be visible.
Okay.
You can turn on your camera. Both things will be visible. You can now turn on the camera. Because every time you open the slide, you need to turn on the camera. That's how this
Yeah,
application works.
but then what happens when when I'll try to do the
Now
slideshow?
everything is visible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I'll let it remain in this form only. I'm not trying to show the slideshow. Okay. Yeah. So what I was telling about the micro skills and macro skills. So these are the basic skills, and I'm just reading the definition again. So these are the basic skills that any competent counselor employs while working with the client, and they include, but they are not limited to attending, active listening, questioning, and empathy. And we have all discussed about these, and we'll do more about these. So, what I've planned for today's session is that while we are doing each of the skills, we'll also try to practice each of them, because this is a practical oriented course, right? So we all know we can just go into, we all have our books, we can just go into internet and search what these things are, but we need to practice them, we need to apply them in real life. So after we do each of them, we'll try to practice them like in like small role plays or all those things. So let us start with the micro skills. At first, we have attending to the client. So when the client is coming to my clinic, when the client is sitting in front of me, the way I approach the client, the way I sit, what my body posture is, how I maintain my eye contact, each of those things are very important to establish rapport, to establish the trust of the client, and to make the client feel that he is being heard, that I'm genuinely listening to what the client is saying, and I'm not just faking it, or I'm just not sitting here to take his money and waste his time. So the moment the client walks in, the way I present myself, that forms the first impression about me also. And also it is very important to the entire therapeutic relationship. So there's something called the SOLAR position, SOLER, to the acronym to remember the important points of the attending skills. So for S, we have to sit or stand squarely. Then for O, we have an open posture. For L, we have to lean forward. For E, it is to maintain our eye contact or gaze. And for R, we have the relaxed body posture. Now coming to each one of them, we have to if we have to sit or stand squarely. So while taking a session, if I'm like sitting in a very I have my hands and legs are all here and there, and I sit in a very informal position, that does not look good, that does not speak good about me also. So I'll have to sit in a proper formal position. But the important thing is that I'll have to maintain an open posture. Now what happens is, when we are suppose if, when even when we are talking to our friends, sometimes we tend to sit like this, right, with our hands closed. So what happens is, that sort of makes the client or the person who is sitting in front of me feel that I am not accepting him. So the client who is walking into the clinic, he's already in a lot of pain and a lot of emotional pain. He's very confused as well as to, I have to talk to a stranger about my problems, about my deep internal issues. And now if I sit in a position which makes him feel that I'm not paying attention to him, or I'm not accepting him, or I may be ignoring him, that can be quite painful to him. So it is good to keep an open posture, not to sit with your hands crossed. And now with the online platform, many of us, we have to venture into telecounseling also. What is advised for the online platform is not to show your hands, because in the small space of the screen, it is very easy to sit with your hands away from the screen. So just sit in a way where your hands are not visible. We are not sitting like this, or we are not sitting like this thinking. So just sit in a way where just your face and the upper part of your body is visible. So this was all about open posture. The next thing is leaning forward. Even again, when we are talking in a informal setup or with our relatives or friends, then also when we are interested, or when we are actually listening to what the person is saying, we tend to lean forward into towards the person, so as to and the person feels that we are interested and we are listening to the person. Here also the same thing. While we are talking to the client, we'll not sit like this in a very straight position, or we'll not lean backwards. We lean towards the client, not so much so like the client feels that I'll just get on top of his body. No, in a proper optimum way, I'll just lean slightly towards him. And so this was about L, leaning forward. The next one we have is E, or eye contact. Again, very understandable that when I'm talking to somebody and I'm looking here, when somebody's talking to me, I'm looking here, I'm looking there, I'm not looking into his eye, I'm looking at the fan rotating in the room. That is not advisable. That is, nobody likes to be spoken to in that way. So we'll look into the client's eyes, we'll maintain a straight gaze, and we'll conduct the session. Yeah. So the last one we have, that is relaxed body posture. Again, we have to conduct a 45-minute session, a 50-minute session. If we are sitting or standing in an attention position, that won't help. We'll get tired. The client will also think that this counselor, she wants me to go away as fast as possible. So and she's not liking talking to me. So she's maintaining a very strict position, and it's in a very in a robotic fashion she's talking. So that will also not help the client. So we'll try to maintain a relaxed body posture, and we'll also follow the other things that's written. Yeah, now coming, so this was all about how to attend to the client. Now let us do the next skill. Then we'll do a small role play. And also I've put 3 L's in attending skills. So sorry for that. So next we have active listening. Again, a very, very important skill. I cannot stress much upon the importance of this skill, this is something which we need to learn, which we need to enhance throughout our entire career, our entire journey, because this is what will make us a competent counselor. If we are not listening to the person, if we are not listening actively to the person, then we will not be able to proceed with the other steps only. We'll The rapport will not be formed, and the sessions will get terminated very soon because we are not listening to the person. The person wants to be heard. The person who's coming to me with all her trauma, all her problems, that person, maybe they have never been heard in their entire life. They have only been rejected, they have been ignored. So he's coming to me as a last resort. So the basic thing which I need to do is I need to listen to him. Now, again, there's a difference between hearing and listening. We know that hearing is just receiving the sounds. We are the sounds are audible and the vibrations are coming to my ear. That is hearing. But listening is more than that. Listening is accurately understanding the meaning of what they are saying, along with hearing the sound, and it is hearing and memorizing what they are saying. It is being sensitive to the cues. It is also noting the non-verbal communication that is going on, observing the body language, then taking into account the personal and the social context in which the communication is occurring. Now, active listening along with this also includes showing that understanding, that I am understanding what you're saying, I'm very much acknowledging what you're saying, and I'm also expressing that. It helps in establishing rapport, building trust, and also facilitating the free expression of the client. So this was the basic concept of what active listening is. Then we come to the basic skills of the active listening. We have to understand the client's perspective, from what the client is saying, what he is saying, why the client is saying. We have to get into his shoes. Again, empathy, like I say, that empathy will be there throughout, from the time the client walks into my clinic for the first time till the time the client walks out for the last time. Empathy has to be there throughout the entire journey. So again, to understand the client's perspective, to acknowledge the cultural and contextual differences. Definitely, all the clients I'll be seeing will not belong to the same culture. We'll have so many differences. To acknowledge the differences, to understand the differences, and to walk accordingly along with the differences. Now, I know that if I say this thing, this will be hurting my clients' cultural or religious beliefs. Will I say that thing? I'll not say that thing, because I acknowledge that even if I do not believe or go by the client's beliefs, I have to acknowledge and respect his own choices. Then the next thing, asking open-ended questions. This we'll do later also in detail. This includes asking questions that need elaborative answers, and not just short 1 or 2 word answers like how's the weather today, is it cold or hot. I'm giving him the options, so he'll say it's hot, it's cold. That is close-ended question. But close-ended questions are not advisable at all in a counseling session, because what is our motto? We want to make the client talk freely. We want to make the client express. We want to make the client tell us all the things that he has not given importance also all these days. So if we give him close-ended questions, we are not facilitating his expression. But we need to ask open-ended questions, where we'll again, with the weather example, we'll just ask him, what do you feel about the weather today? So he'll say that I feel it's hot, but yesterday was much hotter. It would be good if it rained. So an entire conversation will begin from there. Again, the next point, very important, managing initial resistances. Yes, when a client is walking into the clinic, as I say, that he's very confused. He has a lot of apprehensions, a lot of tension, anxiety, and a lot of negative feelings in himself. And many a times the client might not be ready to share all of their very close and personal details with you, so the client might be resistant. This type of things we see mostly in the cases where the clients do not themselves come for counseling, but they are sent by their office, or they are sent by their family, for example, in the substance abuse cases, so you find a person who has a problem of alcoholism and he has been sent to your clinic. Definitely that he does not believe he has a problem. He believes that his life is all fine. So there we'll have to manage the resistance, go with the resistance, that and come out of it and make the client express himself. Because at first when he's coming, he will not want to talk. He'll say that I am fine, I've been sent here forcefully, what will you do with my life? You're such a young girl, you're such a young man, you do not know anything about my life, you have no experience, what will you do? So we cannot get angry by all those things. They are a part of the process. So we have to manage those resistances very tactfully. Again, the next thing, again, a part of the micro skills, encouraging, paraphrasing, and summarizing what the client is saying. And at the end, reflection of feeling. So these are the basic active listening skills. Now these encouraging and reflection of feeling, they are also part of the micro skills, and we'll do them shortly. But before that, I want 2 volunteers. Who will volunteer? Tell me. Come up, any 2 of you, and we'll do a short kind of practice session with the active listening skills and the solar position. So what we'll do is, one of you will make up a small situation kind of thing, a small problem, and you will tell about your problem for, suppose, say 1 minute or 2 minutes. And the other person who will play the role of the counselor, he will have to actively listen, talk in such a way that incorporates all the points I just said, or sit in such a way, attend to you in such a way that the solar position is maintained. And in that way, we'll be able to practice how it goes on in an actual session. So who will come up? 2 of you. And you have to please keep your cameras on also.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes.
Hello, ma'am. Yeah, you told the case just now, right? About an alcohol person substance abuse case.
I was just
He's
giving an
ignoring
example.
that. Yeah, ma'am. So how we will deal with such cases? Yeah, even my friend had such experience, so I want to know more. Yeah.
Okay. So I'll discuss this at the end of the class, because this is again another
Yes, ma'am.
huge
Sure.
topic to study. So we'll do it at the end of the
Yeah,
class.
ma'am.
I will
Okay.
just give you a short overview.
Yeah,
Uh,
sure.
so would
Yeah.
you like to volunteer for the role play? Any 2 of you, please
Yes,
come up.
ma'am.
Okay, so turn on your camera and your audio, and we need one more. Who will come up? Again, as I keep on telling, this is a practical internship. So if you don't practice, there's no point. Because these things you'll all be able to read in the net, in the books. But we need to learn how to apply those in the real life. Whoever wants to do it, just switch on your camera and your audio, and just tell me that I'm here.
Yeah. Hello, am I audible?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm Rudulata. I want to volunteer.
Okay. Excellent. So we have our 2 volunteers, but I don't think you're visible, or is it not showing me? Just a second. Yeah, you're visible. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Nella, you're also visible. Uh, so are you two visible to each other?
No.
Can you two see each other? Because
I can see her.
okay, you can see her. So
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I'm able to see her now.
Okay. Yeah. So who will want to be the client and who will want to be the counselor?
I will be the counselor.
Okay.
Fine.
Let's start. Uh,
Shall I start?
So Mridulata ma'am, imagine you have come to the session for the first time. You are meeting her and you are telling your problem. So tell her. So let's do this for like a very short time, 2 minutes. Tell her a small problem and she'll do it accordingly. Let's start.
Okay. Yeah. Hello, ma'am.
Hi, your name, please?
I am Sita.
Oh, what are you doing now?
I'm in degree final year.
Okay. So, would you like to talk about something?
During exams, I feel very nervous, ma'am. Like all the night I'll be studying, but as soon as I go to the examination hall, I forget everything, and I feel nervous, and I'll be sweating everywhere, very profusely. Like my whole paper will be wet with my sweat. I want to come out of this problem.
Okay. This occurs always,
Yeah, most of the time, ma'am.
even the internal exam and external.
Yeah, every time any exams I attend, I feel like I have such feelings.
Oh, what do you think would be the reason for that?
That's what I don't know, ma'am. Like I have to come out. I'm seeking the reason for it.
Okay. Uh, so, how when will be you will be having any thoughts about exams or anything? Any thoughts
That's
during
right,
exam
ma'am.
time?
Even I have a thought of exam, I'll sweat like anything. Like right now also, I am feeling very nervous when you're talking about exam thing. I am feeling nervous.
Oh, well, while talking about exam, what comes to your mind?
Fear, like I can't stand the word exam itself.
Oh, so how will be your preparations and all? You
Preparation
will
and
be
all
facing
I'll
any
do
difficult.
well, ma'am, but the as soon as I think of exam, I'll have this fear.
Okay. Hmm. So it's hello. I can't see you now.
I'm able to see you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. Ah, yeah, you are. Okay. So you feels like your hands are sweating and what else you while hearing about exam you you will be having some fear, right?
Right.
Okay. Mm. Hello, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, both of
Yeah.
you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you,
Very good,
ma'am.
very good. Uh, what we saw from Naila's way of speaking, that she was trying to maintain eye contact as much as it is possible through the camera videos, and she was asking open-ended questions like the questions she were asking. She was those were open-ended in nature, and she was from her body gesture and her expressions. It was visible that she was genuinely listening to what was being said to her. It is not that she was just ignoring or not paying attention. So we could understand from her body language that she was actually paying attention and actively listening, and also that she was maintaining eye contact, maintaining the correct body posture, leaning slightly towards her client. So we saw how active listening and the attending skills are used. Now we'll come to the rest of the skills, and again I'll request volunteers please for each of them after I finish. So yeah, so after active listening, we have encouraging. Again, a very very important part. As I said, the clients who are coming to us, they might not always be very free to talk, they might be very shy. So it is our job, it is our responsibility as a counselor to encourage them and to make them talk. So we use certain small words called encouragers, and this process is also known as intentional listening, and they involve fully attending to the client and thus allowing them to explore their feelings and thoughts more completely. So we can think of these encouragers as verbal and non-verbal ways of prompting clients to continue talking. And the kinds of encouragers will be like non-verbal minimal responses, like positive facial expressions like she was giving or nodding her head, which she was doing. Then verbal responses like uh-huh, I hear what you are saying. Then brief invitations to make the client talk more. So if the client is supposed pausing, or the client is hesitating to tell you something, so we can just say that tell me more, please continue, or we can could you please elaborate. So all those things. So these work as prompts to help the client talk more, express themselves, and that in turn explore themselves more. So I have collated a short list of the encouragers which we can use. So we have the sure, please continue, indeed, tell me more, yes, I hear you, and go on. So I see, really, oh, right. Then, so we have to use each of them with the correct intonation, with the correct articulation, so that the client feels that we genuinely want to listen to the client. We want to listen to what the client is saying, and we want to help them out, and we have to encourage them for talking. Yeah. Then next we come to asking the open-ended questions. So as we all know that,
Excuse me, ma'am.
yeah, not visible.
Your PPT is not visible.
It's visible to us.
Just check once. No?
It's visible, ma'am, perfectly. I think there's a network problem from there, and
Okay, okay,
we can see you also, and we can see your PPT.
okay.
I think all
Yeah.
people are able to see the PPT and ma'am.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yes.
just let me know. Okay, okay. Yeah. So continuing, then we after encourages we come to asking open-ended questions. Now Naila gave very good examples of the open-ended questions. So they are questions which cannot be answered with a short, simple yes or no, but they require the client to elaborate on their points, to talk more, which will in turn help the client to explore and express freely. So they include tell me about it, please elaborate. And if we find that the client is not being able to talk at all, he's losing his way, so we can use not close ended but slightly less open ended questions like how do you feel about that. Now why do we avoid close ended question? Because again that narrows down their point of view, that will not help them to express themselves, and maybe the options that we'll give them to say yes or no to, they actually do not follow any of those options. They want to say something else, but we are not giving them the chance to say. So we'll always go by open ended questions so that we can understand the client's perspective better. So till now in the micro skills, we have done the attending skills, active listening, encouraging, and asking open-ended questions. Next, let's come to the next one. So we have two more. We have paraphrasing and summarizing. So in paraphrasing, what happens is the client will non-judgmentally, in an accurate form, mirror back what the client has just told the counselor. So the counselor will communicate back an accurate understanding of what has been communicated by the client. So let us say an example. If the client tells me that I'm delighted that you could see me so quickly, so I will paraphrase it and tell that you're pleased that I could meet you so soon. And next we have summarizing. So this generally happens at the end of a session where the counselor puts together the key themes, the key feelings, the issues, filtering out all the irrelevant parts which have appeared overwhelmingly. And the counselor will include both the verbal and non-verbal parts. So at the definitely when a client is coming to me, he'll say whatever he's thinking is important, whatever he's coming to his mind, he'll not think, or he'll not sort, or he'll not understand what part is relevant or what part is irrelevant, because he is overwhelmed by his emotions. So again, it is my task, it is the counselor's task to screen out, to filter out the important themes, issues, and feelings that have come up in the session, and to summarize it and paraphrase it and reflect it back to him. So this was all the oh no, we have one more left. This was all about the micro skills. We have come to the last one. So it is reflection, just what I told right now, repeating the client's words back to them exactly as they say them, not quote unquote, but the meaning and the feel of the words, feel of what the client has said should remain the same. So reflection of feelings can promote the development of accurate empathy and emotional security. So there are three parts. We have to identify the feeling words and phrases. We have to pick up the feelings from their non-verbal parts, also from their voice, from the body messages, and then we have to reflect back and also give the reasons. So we'll start by saying that you feel, or you're, so suppose the client has been saying that I feel so pissed off that my husband does this, my husband never listens to me, and all those things. So while reflecting back, we'll say that you feel irritated at your husband's this behavior. So we'll give the reason also. So you feel irritated because your husband is maybe not listening to you. So we'll give the feeling, the feel, pick up the feeling word, and also the reason. So again, this will help the client gain a more first, so it will help the client understand that I've understood what he has told me, that I was actually listening to him, and I am acknowledging what he's saying. And also again, it will help the client get a more crisper and clearer perspective of his or her problem, that oh okay, so this is why I am getting irritated on my husband. So this was all about the micro skills. Now again, we'll do a very short role play. Who will volunteer? Who would like to volunteer? Yes,
I
please.
volunteer, ma'am.
Okay, hello.
Yeah, I'm Kalpana.
Yes, and somebody else? Kiranmai ma'am, you would like to speak? Please turn on your camera and your audio. Yes.
Can you see me?
Okay, lovely. So now we'll work upon the skills which we just did. So let's work upon, we have done active listening and attending. So we'll use some encouragers now when we are talking. We'll try to ask open-ended questions, and at the end, we will try to summarize and reflect back. Okay, so we have three tasks now. We'll use encouragers. We'll use the encouraging words that we have just learned. I think there's an audio problem somewhere. Just check once. Yeah, so we'll use encouragers. Then we'll ask open-ended questions, and at the end, we'll summarize and we'll reflect back. Okay. Again, so who will be the counselor and who will be the client?
I'll be the counselor.
Okay. Okay, great.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Okay.
No problem. Yeah.
So, yeah, we can
Yeah.
start the session.
Yeah, take over.
Okay. So, hello, Kiranmai ji. I'm your counselor. So, please tell me why you visiting me today?
Any situation or like how to relax?
I think we can take any situation, right, ma'am?
Yeah.
Anything.
Yes, anything.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good
Due
evening.
to this corona and online classes, I'm much
Worried about my son,
Okay.
uh, especially about the writing part. He never used to keep his books incomplete. These days, little bit incomplete work is there, and I'm worried to send him to school offline classes. So,
Okay.
how can I?
Okay. So, what is the problem that you're facing at home with him? Or is it just because you don't want to send him outside?
I'm worried about sending him outside.
And at
So,
home also, are you facing any problem? At home also, is there any problem that you're facing?
so he's getting addicted for phone.
To
Never
phone?
used to touch phone like how he is using it. Watching the reels, shorts, something like that. And I don't like this.
Okay, so he's spending too much screen time. Okay.
Yeah, not too much, but he is using instead of utilizing his time and mobile for writing and taking the notes, then he is using the mobile for some other things. I'm getting frustrated. I'm worried about how to stop it. And
Okay, so he's not
more,
able to focus on the studies, right? That's
mm,
what you're saying. Okay, so do you have like any other alternate option? Like, do you have a laptop or a computer at home where you can take his classes?
yeah,
Yeah.
laptop.
So rather than using a mobile phone, can you use the laptop for the classes?
You can't because he get
May
always
I just interrupt once? So,
yeah.
Kalpana, excellent what you are saying. Just what I was telling about the open-ended questions, we'll not give the options, right? The part you said that do you have any other options? We'll try to bring it up from the client. What options he has, which one she'd like to take, because suppose we are giving him other options like you have a laptop or a computer. Maybe the client has some other thing in mind which he wants to communicate. Okay, so just we'll keep that in mind that we'll try to keep it as open and ended as possible. Now again, this is a thing we'll learn with time, but again, excellent, the other skills you've been using very nicely. Please continue.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, yes, you were saying, please tell me.
Yeah, with the
You,
laptop,
yeah.
the problem is always it is hanging. So
Okay,
classes may get disturbed.
okay, okay. And computer?
How can I encourage him only to write, not for silly videos to watch?
Okay, okay. So we like yeah, I think what we can do is that I know that you're facing this problem, and right now, because he's small, so you'll be worried about him going outside, and and that is, most of the parents are facing this problem. So don't get too worried about it. It can be like we
Your
can still
voice
manage that.
your voice is low.
My voice is low. One second.
Yeah,
Now is it okay?
yeah.
Yeah. So I was saying that we'll try to manage it by doing some, like, we can maintain a timetable for him. So you cannot restrict him completely, because even if for adults, like if we use the mobile phone, it's a general habit for everyone that we get distracted, using certain apps, or rather than studying we do some other things like just passing the time or just getting distracted. So for a child it is also like just it's same, and the child might be more, if he has a game to play on the phone, so it's very common to get distracted. But what you can do is you can try to balance those two things. So if he might have a timetable of the classes, like when the classes are going to happen, right? Yeah, so try
Yeah,
to prepare him. So try to prepare him for like around half an hour or 20 minutes before the class, that when he's going to have a class, and try to give him around half an hour to 40 minutes to play a game or do whatever kind of activity that he wants to do. Okay, so that when he is sitting for the class he is not distracted. Tell him that you play right now, or you can do it after the class also, as it works for your child. Okay, so
Yeah,
he
but
has to
the
sit for
problem,
the class.
excuse me,
Sorry.
yeah, I think we need to use the list of encouragers. Now, he has his own timetable. He doesn't get any, in between classes, he won't get disturbed. He sincerely listens to his classes. But
Actually,
after session, yeah,
Anupama ma'am, I am little confused with this case, that where will I use the encouraging words, because it's kind of a different case than where I can
No, no, it's
use the
okay.
encouraging
But
words.
yeah,
very good try. Very good try, definitely.
tell him
So
more.
encouragers are they are think of it in this way that when she's talking, these are short words like, okay, sure. Would you please tell more? Okay, oh, this happened. Like, so if the client is getting stuck, we'll use them to make the client talk in that way. And
Okay.
whatever you said was absolutely correct. Just I would like to comment upon the last part, that we will try to refrain from suggesting directly to the client or giving advice of that sort. So uh, suppose you have a plan jotted out in front of you, that this is what I want to do with the client, or this is what my ultimate plan is, but I will try to bring that up from the client itself, right?
Okay.
So, whatever I have planned in my mind, I will frame my questions in such a way that I'll try to bring up the answers from the client.
Okay.
It can happen that in that process, the client comes up with some more innovative solutions. That can also happen. So,
Yes.
suppose you were saying that about that your child is spending too much that yeah that
Screen time. Yeah.
yeah, screen time. So we can make a timetable. So we can ask her that what options do you think we can use to come out of this problem, or what have you tried, or what would you like to try? So in this
Okay.
way,
Okay.
everything we'll try to bring up from the client, because our work is to engage the client cognitively.
Yeah.
Our main job is to make the client think and think, because once the counseling sessions are over, then also the problems in his or life will be there, new problems will come. So the client needs to have the or learn the habit of thinking, so that he can come up with new solutions. But again, as I said, that open-ended questions is something that even I am still learning today how to ask, so it will take time, no worries. But again, great start.
Okay. Thank you.
uh,
Yeah. So
so
should we continue or should we
no, no,
stop?
it's okay. Uh, yeah, let's continue with the session then. Okay, let us do one small thing. Any of you, any from both of you, if you would like to, let me be the counselor. You just be the client and tell me any short thing, and we'll just try to practice the open-ended questions.
Ma'am, your voice is breaking.
Mm,
No, it's good. That's good. Yesterday, it's good.
am I audible now?
Yeah.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Okay. Yeah. So, who would like to speak now? Just
Kiranmai ma'am, please mute yourself, please. There's an echo sound coming.
Yeah.
okay. So, who would like to speak? We'll just do a short part where I'll try to come up with open-ended questions. Anybody?
Me.
Yes, please.
Hi, Ram. Shikha here.
Hi. Yeah.
So, okay. Mm, We can repeat the same, case. Like if I'm getting the same case,
Yeah.
that will be fine. Yeah. Okay. So next month, actually, should I start directly? Sorry.
Yeah, yeah, no problem.
Yeah. So, 1 minute. Sorry, ma'am. Yeah.
Yeah.
So next month my exam is starting. So I'm preparing, like I am preparing daily, whatever time I'm getting. But still, I get the feeling that on the exam day, I'll be forgetting everything, and everything will be blank. And again, I'll be sticking to the same level where I am today. So that thought is, on a that thought is above while studying also. Yeah.
So you feel worried that on the day of your exam you will not be able to perform well, and that hampers your current studying schedule?
Yes, ma'am. It happens most of the time.
Okay. And could you like to elaborate what you feel are the reasons behind your thought, or how you, when you started thinking like this?
Uh, Exam is something which I have always, feared of, because I felt this thought always came up the first. If I'm telling also myself that, okay, I've studied this subject, it's very easy, we can go through this. Still, that thought comes up a bit louder that no, the paper will be difficult, and this time again we are going to be on the same place. So, yeah.
Uh, did you ever have any bad experience in the exam hall? Could you please elaborate on that if you want to?
It might be in school days, I guess, when I was in school, and that too when I was very young, seventh, eighth class. Just
Okay. So, one important question: do you have any exams coming up now?
yes, ma'am. Next month.
Okay. So, and what are the worst scenarios that come up to your mind? Would you like to talk about that?
Okay. It's bit difficult to tell that thought, because currently I'm preparing for the competitive exam, not even the college exams. So it's in competitive exam, it's like you pass, you get through that. If you are not, then again you are on the same preparation level, and that too level 0. So it's always like I have to get through this. I'll be telling myself that I have to get through this, and again it will be no, this year also it's going to be the last year, and yeah.
So it is like you're putting an added pressure on yourself, that
I
the pressure that you have to get through. So you are thinking in should and must, that I should get through, I must get through this. That
Yeah,
is
I
happening with
feel
you.
like there should be a bit of pressure, so that that can motivate me to study and maintain a routine. But as the exam will be approaching, that the routine will be there. It will not be like I'll be giving up and sitting at a place. I will be studying, but I have to keep on assuring myself that no, this time it will be the time when I'm going through the exams.
Okay.
So
Again, just taking just interrupting the session.
yeah.
Because you're expressing so nicely, I'm not having to put much effort into asking you open-ended questions. But now we'll focus on a little later part of what we do in the session. So I'll try to give a short glimpse of that. So let's proceed. We'll just try to see on how can we try to change the thinking patterns. If we go by the cognitive modality, how can we try to think the change the thinking patterns, or what restructuring methods we can use? Okay, so just a short example of that. Okay, so let's resume again.
Yes.
Okay. uh, so you said that you have an inherent fear of exams, but you also said that you have just one not very bad. I mean, it was a bad experience, but that was very long back, and that does not trouble. That memory does not trouble you so much lately, but the fear is there now. Can you tell me this much, that what are the good thoughts do you have about your exam? What are the good scenarios you can imagine?
Uh, about exam,
Or about after the exams, about the results?
okay. After exams, it bit of a relaxed time. Okay, I don't have to study now for a while, and I can go somewhere, have my favorite food, meet some friends, and chill out, uh, kind of thing. And yeah, waiting for result is not a problem for me. Like, how to tell? Like before result, I don't get anxious or that thought disturbs me. So yeah, after exam, it's like okay, I've done whatever I can do, and but
And regarding the results, what good scenarios can you imagine, like after your results have come out?
if it's not in my favor, so it will be like from that moment I'll be again starting preparing, and like not preparing the routine, thinking of the strategies that I can follow or obtain new strategies, and again changes in some routine in particular subject. Like I'll be brainstorming how to again get into that routine of studying. But again, when I start studying, the same thought, okay, again the same thing. Like,
Okay. So definitely the thought is there, the thought is persistent, and the thought is quite distressing to you. But again, you only said that even if the worst feared scenario happens, you know the solutions, what you will do, or you know the methods of coming out of it, right? So now tell me that, so how much importance do you think that you will give to the this disturbing thought that comes while you're studying? Because practically in real life terms, you know what you will do if the worst happens. So now if we treat the thought like just a simple thought, like any other thought, how much importance will you give it when it comes daily while you're studying, it's disturbing you?
after talking to you, it's like on out of 10, it will be around 2, 3.
And earlier it was?
Earlier, it was 6, 7.
Okay. Yeah.
Ma'am,
Okay.
I
Yeah.
have a question, like
Yes.
out of this session.
Yeah.
I had a client, you know, a normal, sudden, when you are in contact of your friends or someone, they will be like consulting you
Hmm, hmm.
normally, not as a proper counselor thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I had a student who was, preparing for SSC, some government exams. So I was telling the same thing, like te- uh, guiding him to brainstorm and get into what he's actually like. He have the solution, he's not seeing that, but he was so stuck on that thing, that this thought. So somewhere I was also stuck now what to tell. I hope you are getting that. Like
Yeah,
we are
yeah.
also stuck
Yeah.
when the client is pressurizing on that particular problem, that no ma'am,
Hmm, hmm, hmm.
this thought, and daily they will be telling the same thing. Even if you tell some advice, they'll be saying, "Huh, I did that. Yeah, it was easy. It was um, what to tell. Activity was fun or something." Still, they will be stuck there on that particular thing. So, how to take forward that as well? That's why I came up with this.
Yeah, yeah. So with you also, the part that you have the solution in your head, that was not the important part. The part was that you could look at the bigger picture, that I have the problem, I am looking at the problem in this particular way, but there is also a different way of looking at it, and I can look at it in that way. So that is why your distress level reduced, that my problem is not insolvable. So the problem of this person, from what you're saying, I can understand is that person is stuck in that very narrow perspective that he currently has. He cannot come out of it, and it definitely happens. It will happen also in our practice that we are using some particular technique which we feel works the best for this, but it might not work for the client. Okay, then we need to go for some other. We need to then we need to look at the factors for why we think that this is not working. Like, if even if I'm giving him some homework, why he's not doing that, or even after why doing everything, why is it not working? So we need to look into that, look into the other factors and all. And also, with again another thing, I'd just like to tell you that we'll not try to suggest anything to the client, we'll not try to advise anything to the client. So as we'll do the counseling sessions also, we'll see that there are techniques for each of the things. Like for the cognitive counseling or the cognitive CBT, there are cognitive techniques, there are restructuring techniques, and they work very well. So we have suppose we have techniques like uh, pie chart technique. If we suppose, so a person comes and tells me that I'll fail, I have this thought that I will fail, or some bad thought. So we'll make him do it. We'll sort of draw a pie chart, and we'll try to list the causes of the bad behavior, a bad thing that will happen to him, what he feels about. So suppose a person comes to me and tells me that I have a headache, and I think that I have brain tumor, I will die within 1 week. But there's been tests, there's been medical reports, and he does not have any medical problem, but he still has this very, very stubborn thought that I have the brain tumor and I will die. So then we'll try to draw the pie chart, and we'll try to ask him, for what other things do you think the headache can be there? So he'll come up with things like from stress, from migraine, from other things. Then we'll ask him to tell, like, now tell me, how much do you think your headache is for the migraine, or for stress, or for some other reason? And he'll start attributing that 60% I feel that it is due to my stress, or because I am not sleeping well. 30% I feel it can be due to migraine. Then again, 10% I feel that I may be getting power. And maybe at the end he'll say that, okay, 0.5% I feel that it can be brain tumor. So the thing that he was saying, that it's 100% due to this, that is coming down to 0.5%. And we are not telling him that you don't think like this, what you're thinking is wrong, you don't have anything like this. He'll not understand that. Because even if somebody comes and tells us, like, we are very worried, suppose you have your MPhil exams coming up, entrance or net exams coming up, we are very worried, and somebody comes and tells us, oh, don't take tension, don't chill, you'll pass. Even if you don't pass, no problem. We'll not feel relaxed, but we'll feel very pissed off at the person. We'll feel very irritated, and we'll just tell the person, you go away, don't eat my head, I'll fail, and now don't make me angry. So that will happen. So that is what we need to think for the other person, for our clients as well. When we start giving them advice, we'll start suggesting them, they'll feel like she's like all others only, she's telling me what to do, she's not, I know what to do, but she's not looking into my problem. So we need to make the client think. So with the pie chart technique, what happened was, the client had to think. The client himself came up with all the other possibilities that were there. He himself came up with all the other causes that could be there, and that made him realize that the fear I am having, definitely it might come true for anybody, but it's not like that I have it right now and I'll die right now. So that fear is somehow illogical or irrational, and maybe I have better things to do than fear. So there are other techniques also. There's the downward arrow technique, and many other techniques which we can use, and as we'll see them. But again, one thing we'll try to maintain in our practicing career, till as much as we practice, how long, we'll not advise, or we'll try not to give suggestions. If now again it's needed, but we'll have to understand when it's needed. So suppose for a person who has depression and he's coming to us and he's telling that will I ever get better? So to that person, we need to reassure, we need to suggest him that yeah, you will get better, or we are trying to give him some behavioral activities, or and he's not coming up with anything because he's so depressed. So for him, we might tell him that then also we'll give him options. So what are the things you like doing? Do you can you listen to music? Can you read a book? So we'll try to, again, we'll have to modulate. That we'll understand with our practice. We learn with each of our clients, and we learn with the clients who are more difficult and the ones where we feel like we have failed or they have terminated. We learn the most from them. Okay. So moving on. So this was all about the micro skills. Now this is just a short one. So implication of each of the skills. Why should we use these skills? How will it help our clients? So we must listen because it will help the client to develop his or her thinking. We will not judge because it will we will if are not judging will feel make the client feel safe and respected. If we pay attention, the client will know that we care. If we accept the client's feeling, he'll know that he's not being judged. And we'll think about the when we all do this, that when we are out of our session and we are in the week in between, we keep on thinking about our client. We keep on thinking what is the best possible help that we can get, what techniques we can use, or what went wrong in the past session. So that is also extremely beneficial for the client. And the counselor may also ask questions that will again help the client to develop his or her thinking, explore his or her problem more. And we need to summarize because that will help the client to hear his or her thoughts aloud and to know that he or she is understood. So this was all about the micro skills and their importance. Next, we come to the macro skills, and these are skills which will help the client view their difficulty in a larger perspective. So this will provide depth and insight to the client and also into their understanding of their problems, and also it will enhance their potential for a positive change. In the micro skills part, we have covered that we'll help the client talk, we'll help the client explore his or her feelings. And in the macro skills part, we'll help the client to see the bigger picture, just as I was telling about the person with a headache. So we'll use skills, we'll use techniques which will help the client see the bigger perspective, and he'll also that will help him come up with solutions, that will help him come up with the ways for positive change. So let us take a look at the macro skills. So we have the following. There's focusing, reflection of meaning, interpretation or reframing, self-disclosure, validating, and empathizing. Now we have done the importance of empathy in detail, so not going into that. And again, validating is similar. It is all about summarizing, rephrasing, acknowledging the client. So let us take a look at the other points. Focusing. So it is again very important. We need to focus upon the individual, the problem, his family, his cultural aspects, and his educational background, and so many things. We need to keep our focus and our attention fixed on the client and all his problems. Then again, reflection of meaning. So in the micro skill part, we did the reflection of the feeling. So we were trying to reflect back what the client is feeling, what the client is experiencing. And in the macro skill part, we will try to reflect back the meaning of the problem or the meaning of what the client is saying. That will help the client to find new ways of examining their current life and problem, and also in depth listening of the problems of the deeper issues, and also having a good and proper vision about the present, the past, and the future. So again, an overlapping concept of summarizing and paraphrasing, and will help the client to evaluate their problems, gain new perspective about their problems. Then we come to interpretation and reframing. So this is supplying the clients with new perspectives, ideas, and words so that they can use new ways of thinking, feeling, and behaving differently. Again, as you were saying about the person with the exam problem or the exam phobia, if we take that example only, what we could have done here is we could have used this technique of interpretation and reframing, where we are not advising him, we are not suggesting him, but we might just offer him a new perspective. We might just offer him, like small prompts in the forms of ideas and words, so that they can incorporate this into their thinking and ultimately into their feeling and behavior. So we might just, prompt them to think in a different way. So we could have asked him that, I know this problem is there, I know you're distressed to an extreme amount because of this, but what if we could think like this, or can we say this as a solution? So all these things. So we'll not use statements, but whatever we want to say, we'll try to put them in question form. Yeah, so this was all about interpretation and reframing. And again, interpretation as a technique is used a lot in psychoanalysis. We know in Freud's psychoanalysis, psychodynamic theories, in the short-term psychodynamic theories also. So their interpretation has a different meaning, where their uh, childhood issues and all those unconscious conflicts and all those things, they are interpreted so that the clients get a hang of what is happening with them. But here in counseling, interpretation will or reframing will mean that reframing the problem, or what we could do is we could reframe the problem in such a way, we could use such a different sentence which the client will which will make the client feel that he's having a new perspective, or he's having a new way of looking at the problem. And then we come to self disclosure, where we could share our own related stories about our own related past, or we could share some personal observation about the client or his problems. And it also helps in reorienting our clients. So self disclosure is again a very helpful part, but again we have to be very careful in using. So suppose the client is saying something very distressing, and I'll make him stop and listen. This happened with me also. Somebody in my family also died. I was also in a very bad situation. That will make the client feel thwarted. That will make the client feel that I have come to share my pain with the counselor, but what rubbish my counselor is. She is stopping me and she's going on telling about her own story. So we need to be careful at when to use this one. So we can use this technique to make the client understand that she is not alone in the world. There are other people like him who are going through the same problems, but never to make him feel that we are undermining his or her distress, or making him feel that your problem is not so important. You listen to what I'm saying. So we'll have to be careful. Again, we'll learn them as we do. Now coming to the model, the life skills counseling model. So this model was proposed by Nelson and Jones, and this is a very holistic approach to counseling, and this integrates the cognitive, behavioral, existential, humanistic, and all those philosophies. And he then came up with 3 stages, and each of these stages have again phases in them. So we'll discuss them briefly today. So there are 3 stages of the counseling. So there's stage 1, 2, and 3. The first one is relating. That is to form a collaborative working relationship among the counselor and the client. Again, we have stressed upon the importance of this relationship, why we need to have a good relationship. The next stage is understanding, where we have to assess and agree on a shared definition of the problems. So after we have formed a relationship, we need to work with the problem. We need to understand what the problem is in detail, and also if needed, we need to do the required assessments. And the last stage is all about bringing change in the client and to help him maintain the change. So looking into the stages, so there's stage 1, relating, where there are 3 phases. We have the pre-counseling contact. So here, this is communicating and providing the information about the session that happens prior to the first session. So this will involve everything from the client calling up at the clinic to inquire about the appointment, to setting an appointment, or confirming the appointment, paying the fees, and all those things. Then we have phase 2, that is starting the initial session, where meeting, greeting, seating, then making opening remarks and encouraging the clients to tell why they have come. They form part of the initial session. And the last phase of the stage 1 is facilitating client disclosure, where we allow the client space to reveal more about themselves and about their problems from their own perspective. So, what they feel their distress is, how long they've been suffering from the problem, excuse me, and why they feel the problem is there in the first place, what are the causes of the problem. So, we'll inquire about all these things. Now, after we have inquired about the problems, we have formed a relationship. Now we'll go into the second stage of understanding. So we have phase one, or reconnaissance, where we'll be conducting a broad review to identify the client's main problems and to collect information to understand him or her better. Yeah, this will include everything from taking the client's socio-demographic details to taking the client's childhood history to taking the client's occupational history, marital history, family history, and all those things, so that we can understand the client's socio-cultural context from where the client is belonging, because this will again help us understand the regions of the client's problems. So what problem he's having, or how his family or how his childhood could be related or influencing his current problems. So this is why we need to collect all these informations. And next we have the detecting and deciding part. We can sort of call this to be the diagnosing part, where we will collect evidences to test ideas about the poor skills and review all the information which will suggest that the skills might require improving. So here we'll detect the problem areas. So suppose a child is coming with a temper tantrums, or the child is inattentive, or has other behavioral problems. So we'll conduct tests, or we'll conduct interviews to find out what are the problem areas, what deficits the child has, or what deficits a person who is coming has, and also all the other information which will suggest us how we can improve upon the skills, and we can finalize that okay, these are my presenting complaints and these are the complaints that I need to work upon. So we will detect and decide what we need to work upon. And at the phase 3 we will arrive at the primary analysis of the problem, and we'll use mind skills, communication skills for improvement. So at this phase we can give the client an understanding of the problems. We can draw a small formulation and make the client understand that from the initial interviews, this is what I understood. So you are having this problem, this started at this time due to this reason, this was your childhood issue, this might be related to this. So in that way, a small uh, chart kind of thing, which will help the client understand what the problem is, so that we can go to the next part of changing. And again, like every part, we'll just not do something and give it to the client and say this is what your problem is. So we'll arrive at the formulation and then we'll present it to the client. Now it totally depends upon the client whether he wants to accept it or not. He might very well say that whatever you have understood about me is absolutely rubbish, totally wrong, this is not true, you have to do it again. So again, we need to work upon that. We need to understand what their problems are, and we need to talk more and come at the formulation. And another thing, that this formulation that we come arrive at, this is not static, this will keep on changing as our counseling progresses. So suppose after 5 sessions, when we are in the intervention part, after that we'll have to come at a modified form of the formulation, because the client's skills are improving, there are changes in his behavior, there are changes in his thinking. So the formulation will also keep on changing with that. So with this we come to an end of stage 2, or the understanding part. Now we come to the main part of the counseling process, if we say, for which the client has come, that is changing. So here the first phase is intervening, where we will help clients develop and implement strategies for maintaining current problems, and for managing current problems and improving his or her mind skills, that is her thinking and feeling skills, and also her communication and action skills, for both now and later. So this is the phase where we will use our the techniques and the strategies that we have, the cognitive strategies, the behavioral strategies, the emotive strategies, any skills training, anger management, anything that we find relevant and suitable for the client. So this is the part where we use them. And then we have then we slowly come to the termination phase, where we'll before we terminate, we just cannot terminate the client one fine day. We cannot tell him that from next day he won't be coming. So termination is also a process. We'll have to start the we as counselors, we have to start understanding when the client is ready, and when the client is slowly becoming independent or is able to handle his or her problems nicely, or able to come up with solutions. So at first what we'll do is we'll make the spaces among the sessions longer. So suppose you've been seeing the client for twice a week. So we'll make it once a week, then we'll make it fortnightly, then we'll call the client once a month, and then we'll slowly terminate. We'll suppose call him. When we can see that the client is in a state that he can handle the problems himself, we'll terminate the regular sessions, and we'll call him for a booster session. Suppose say 6 months later, and then 1 year later we can come ask him for a follow-up session, how he's maintaining. So in this way, we'll give the client time to adjust to the outside world without my assistance. And lastly, we come to the phase 3, which is the ultimate stage where the client has become self-helping. They can keep using their skills, monitoring their progress, identifying and correcting lapses, and whenever possible, integrating whatever they have learned into their daily living. So this is our ultimate goal of the counseling process, which we might say. But again, it all starts with the first time the client walks into the session, right? So again, let's just come back to stage 1, the first phase, the second phase, when we are starting the initial session, and let's see what goes through the client's mind. So if anybody could just tell me what you feel, what the client goes through when he walks into the clinic for the first time.
Whether the counselor judge or not.
Okay, very good. And what else?
Also, I think rapport building is also very important. They'll observe how the counselor is approaching them and
Yes,
what kind of questions they're asking.
yes, very good.
Yeah, trust building.
Yes. Yeah, so so the client, we came up with the following points. So the client will also notice how my body posture is, how my non-verbal communication skills are, what I'm how in which way I'm behaving. And also he'll have the fear that whether I'll judge him or not. What else will the client think on the first day, when suppose a, a very a client who has just lost somebody is coming to you, or has some relationship issue is coming to you, what will go in his mind when he is coming?
I think he'll think that whether the counselor will understand what I am feeling or not.
So he'll be fearful, or he'll be tense, so as to the wavelength of the counselor and the client will match or not. Okay, very good point. Anything else, anything that you feel will go in the counselor's mind, in the client's mind?
I fear that my will I be answered for my problem.
Yes, very good. That will yeah.
Sorry. I feel like a bit strange looking at the setting and everything. Because the setting where we sit is bit of not a very how to tell, fancy kind of. It's very sober and simple, and we'll be having our notepad and a laptop and be sitting and a chair. So they'll be like, what? It's not like a normal doctor thing, because what they are seeing and coming to a counselor, it's a bit different.
Yeah, so they'll feel strange, they'll feel awkward. Yeah, Also, they might feel that it is nothing like what we've seen in the movies, what they show. It's a very fancy office with a couch and everything. They'll think my counsel is very poor. They might think. Uh,
Yeah.
okay, so anything else which might go in their minds?
Yeah, I think as Shikha said that the client will be feeling very self-conscious.
Yes.
And I think in the initial sessions, the defense mechanism of the client will come into play.
Yes.
So
The
they'll be more defensive than sharing, like till the trust building process takes place.
so there'll be more resistance also.
Yeah,
Yeah,
resistance.
excellent. Why I did this was because we all think from the counselor's point of view, always, because we are on the other side of the chair. But we often forget the person who is coming to us for the first time, what goes on in his or her mind, or what problems he might be facing, because we are so focused upon that I'll have to solve his or her problems, I'll have to make him better. We at times fail to acknowledge the very simple or very subtle emotions that he might be having, like you came up, like that he might be feeling very awkward, or he might be feeling very strange, he might be feeling very self-conscious. So we need to remember all these things. Okay, so you've covered all the points. Let's just take a quick look at the slide. So yeah, as you said, so they are in an unfamiliar territory. They have come to a new place. They are not certain on how to behave with the person who is sitting in front, and they know that they will be asked questions that will reveal personal information about them, and they will have to tell that to somebody who they do not know. They'll have to talk about their deepest and darkest secrets with a total stranger. Now, definitely they'll be having the following questions, like you said. So, can I trust this counselor? Will she actually keep my session confidential? How much am I ready to reveal? Can I at all talk about what has happened in my life? Will this person like me? Will this person think that I'm very stupid to have these problems? These are very trivial issues. Will we be on the same wavelength? Can this person help me? Is the person at all equipped to help me? So this is generally what will go through the client's mind when he's just walking into our client. Now it is totally our expertise, our responsibility, and our capability to make this client at the end of 6 months, or whenever the client is walking out of the clinic for the last time, to make the client think that no, this was the best experience of my life. That depends on us. So how do we start? How do we start the initial session? Just everything we have discussed till now, that we need to develop good skills for meeting, greeting, seating the clients. We need to welcome them in a warm way and in a friendly way. It should not be very formal or very strict or any kind, but it should be warm, friendly, and when both the and also we have to create a very friendly and a very safe environment for the client to say. If the environment is very formal, very tense, the client who is already very tensed from beginning, they will not be able to share anything. So again, it depends on us to create a warm, friendly, and an open environment so the client can talk. When the parties are seated, so we have welcomed the client, the client has come, and we are sitting. We might make an opening statement that indicates the boundaries of the session. Like we say that, hello, good morning, so and so, and after that part is over, we might set the boundaries, because again, boundary setting is very important. The relationship that we have established with a client, that is a professional one. So our sessions will definitely have some boundaries, some time limits. So we can start by saying something like that: we have about 45 minutes together, and then we can give the client permission to talk. Yeah. And also, we like I said, we have to create a safe environment. We'll have to use our active listening skills to help the client feel that their thoughts and feelings are being received and they are being understood. And again, we should be prepared to answer the questions that the clients have, because the clients will have a lot of questions. They're coming to a new environment, they have some problems, the environment is new, the person is new. So they have a lot of confusion, lot of questions. So again, it depends upon us. It is our responsibility to answer the questions in a polite way, in a friendly way, not to get too irritated with the questions. And yeah, so this is all about how to initiate the first session, and then we'll go on with the case history and the MSc that we'll do subsequently in the classes. So yeah, we are already at 8:30, but I'll do another very small role play where we'll just do this part, that the client is coming in, and what will be the first things that the conversation will happen between the client and the counselor. Again, who would like to volunteer? Two people, please. A very short role play. I want new faces now. Others, please participate. Uh, Sukriti ma'am, would you just like to try? Because you were telling that you feel shy talking. So see, this is such a friendly group. We are all, this is such a close-knit group. So you can just try if you are willing to. Anybody. See, I have just come to know some of your names. I need to interact with others also. Ellen, Olivia, whoever. Omkar sir, Prachi. Nobody wants to speak.
Me again.
Ma'am, you can wrap up if no one is interested.
Okay. Yeah, since nobody is willing to speak, let's wrap up. So we'll again meet on next Saturday, and I'll give you a short assignment which you can complete over the course of this week and submit. And I'll also send the PPTs that we have done yesterday and today, and we'll again meet next Saturday. Okay, bye bye.
Thank you, ma'am. Bye.
Thank you for joining, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.